Recording is on.
Cool, we're good to go. It's recording. Did we just lose Erik? Can you guys see Erik?
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I got dropped there.
Okay, awesome. So we're recording now. I can cut those
Perfect.
few seconds at the beginning now, I guess.
Thanks everyone for joining. Today's Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. And this is the Designathon kickoff call, kind of introductory call going over the Ecash bill design contest that we are having as a separate track for the Bitcoin Designathon. My name's Erik. I'll maybe introduce myself a little bit. I'm a product designer that's focused on Bitcoin. I've been focused on Bitcoin kind of heads down since about 2020. That's when I've solely been focused on designing for Bitcoin. And in the last couple years or so, in about, I guess, the last 2 years, I've very much been heads down on a mechanism called Ecash, which is a way for you to send Bitcoin through what are basically tokens. And I know that might have a dirty word in Bitcoin, but essentially what you're doing is you're trading your Lightning sats over Bitcoin Lightning, and then you're getting a string of text that then you can basically push and throw around to different people. And that string of text is a representation of sats. So I won't get too much into how Ecash works because this is more about the contest. So I want to talk more kind of about the contest. And just some of the things that we'll be going over is, first, we'll talk about the prizes that we're awarding for this contest. Then we'll look very explicitly as to what it is that we're designing. And then we'll look into some of the history of physical Bitcoin. So what are some of the other ways that throughout time people have represented Bitcoin physically? Then at the very end, we'll look into a demo of the tool that we're going to be using that actually generates these printable Ecash notes. I hear some kind of clicking and typing in the background. If anyone has a hot mic, do you mind just muting it? And then if you have a question, just, feel free to chime in.
Hey, sorry, how do I mute?
There is, if you take your mouse and you hover over the bottom of Jitsi, a toolbar will pop up, and on the left, there's a microphone icon.
I'm on my mobile.
You're on your mobile? Okay, I might be able to mute. Oh yeah, I have the option to mute. But the problem is, it's this. Maybe try tapping on the screen, and then do you see the toolbar appear?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, because I fear if I mute. Okay, there you go. Now you're muted. So whatever you did works. But okay, I was just worried that he won't be able to unmute, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I guess. So nonetheless, back to the agenda. Yeah, prizes, what it is we're designing. Then we'll go over to the history of physical Bitcoin. Then we'll look into the demo of the tool. So when it comes to the prizes, so we have actually 4 different prizes, but we have 3 places, and I'll explain how the 4th prize is distributed. So we have first place, the winner is going to get 150,000 sats, along with a Here Comes Bitcoin toy. So it's in the form of a promo code that you can use to purchase a plush or something like that from the Here Comes Bitcoin store. Second place is going to be receiving 70,000 sats, and then third place is going to be receiving 30,000 sats. And now I want to talk about the history of physical Bitcoin. I'm sorry, I want to talk about what it is exactly that we're designing. So now that we have the prizes summarized, what is it exactly that this track is about designing? So to put it very, very directly, this is what we're designing. What you see on the left is a visual representation of Ecash. So with Ecash, the QR code or the string of text is the money. So if somebody has an Ecash wallet, they can scan this QR code and then they can just basically claim the sats. Now, Burr is a tool that lets you deposit sats, and then it generates a image or an illustration that looks kind of like a bill. And that's what you're seeing here. This is the initial developer's vision for a paper bill. And this tool has a print functionality. So at any time, you can hit print, it'll open it up, then you can print it, you can cut them out, then you can physically hand these bills to other people that can then scan them and redeem them for Ecash. So this is a way to make Bitcoin a little bit more physical, maybe make it a little bit more analogous to something that people are familiar with, physical cash. And Ecash lends itself really well to this kind of distribution because with Ecash, the string of information is the money. It's what's called a bearer asset. So it's very similar to Bitcoin in that regard, where the person that holds it or has access to that string of text can redeem it. They own that money. If at any time this token is redeemed or accessed by anyone, then it's invalid. So these are also one-time use. One of the things I also want to highlight is that if you go to Burr, which I'll show you at the end of this call, is that and you try to print a bill, you'll notice that there's an empty section for mint. In the past, this is where we had a QR code for the mint URL, which is with Ecash, in order for you to generate or receive Ecash, you have to connect to a custodian, basically a mint, and that's just a URL. So you would plug in that URL, connect to it, then you can send and receive Bitcoin in the form of Ecash tied to that mint. So in this initial version, there's still a section for mint QR code, but this is going to be removed. So that means that in the future, the developer is planning on removing this mint section. So when you design it, you actually don't need to include a mint section. I just want to highlight because that's an important point. And in terms of the technical delivery, here on the right, this is the actual SVG code that is referenced when the application generates this bill here. So when it comes to what it is that we're designing, we're ultimately, yes, we're designing something visual, something very graphic, some representation of a physical bill, but it needs to be in a vector format. So it needs to be an SVG. And if you're using tools like Figma or Adobe Illustrator, it'll automatically give you the ability to generate an SVG out of it. But depending on the complexity of your design, the SVG may or may become extremely large, and there's probably ways to optimize it. There's probably practices that you can do to make it fit nicely and not be too large. But the way that the tool actually works is that there's just a file, literally an SVG file, that is put into the directory. And then when you generate a bill, it pulls from that and displays it. Next, I want to show some examples and talk a little bit about the history of physical Bitcoin. And when I was looking into the history of physical Bitcoin, I referenced an article by Tom Badley, who may be the Tom on this call. I'm not entirely sure. But it's just an article where Tom did a little bit of research about the history of physical Bitcoin. And he cited some references and some examples. So I just want to give him a little bit of credit because this is where I pulled a lot of this timeline and resources from. So let's go all the way back here to 2011. There was bitaddresses.org. So that was a site that manufactured something that looks like this. This is a very primitive form of physical Bitcoin. It's quite similar to the Ecash note that we're designing in some ways, where it looks like a bill, kind of similar shape, similar properties, and it has QR codes. These were designed at a very, very different time. You could see here that the private key is just openly visible here, but in the photo, the gentleman's thumb is covering up the private key for security. So we might kind of look at this nowadays and laugh at it because of the poor security practices. There's address reuse. There's the private key just printed here unencrypted. But you have to remember, this was a very different time. So things were still being explored. The best security practices haven't had time to develop. But this is one of the earliest forms of physical Bitcoin. We move on to 2011, where some of you might have heard of Casacious coins. These are a little, I think, a little bit more well known. If you've seen some of the documentaries on Bitcoin, you might see these, but these were manufactured by somebody, and they made them in different denominations. 1 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin. I think there's like a 50 and 100 Bitcoin ones, and these were a little bit more secure, where the private key, you had to actually open the Casacious coin and then peel back a security layer in the back, and the private key was hidden in there. And these look like something that we're familiar with today in the real world. They look like coins. So it was another way to kind of hand over Bitcoin in this very physical and bare way. In 2013, there came a tool called bit addresses. I watched an old video and I took this screenshot where it kind of looked very similar to this. In some ways, it's like the same bill that we saw, but this let anyone. This was essentially the predecessor to Burr, where it basically let you do the same thing that Burr does, where you can generate Bitcoin. You can generate these bills, and then they would also recommend that you do this offline, by the way. And I'm not sure how it all worked offline, but you would basically download the software. I assume you would verify, then you would run it locally, then it would generate the private keys, and it would generate the amount of paper bills and the forms that you wanted. And you can also encrypt the private key with the passphrase, and then you can go into this site and unencrypt it. It didn't really quite make sense to me, because when you print it out, the private key was on there anyway. So I'm not sure why the BIP38 encryption would work. But nonetheless, it was a way for people to basically print their own bills. And then as we kind of move on to 2021, this is where, not just I think in the world of physical Bitcoin, but in Bitcoin in general, Bitcoin became more mature in terms of design. More time has passed, more money came into the industry, more people became involved, and as a result, more designers started coming into Bitcoin, and they started kind of applying design principles to Bitcoin. And I think this is kind of where we start seeing design kind of enter first and foremost into the world of Bitcoin, of crypto bill design, Bitcoin bill designs. This is an example of a company called Offline Cash, where, very similar, you could see they're printing physical bills. They represent Bitcoin. I believe they chose milli Bitcoin as their denomination, and these have some type of NFC reader on it that allows for either security or loading. I'm not entirely sure. But if we just look at the art, you could see that from a design point of view, these maybe reference some of the conventions that we think about when we think about money. When we think about what does money look like, what should money feel like, what kind of messages should it convey of trust, of maybe like a reference to something timeless. Whatever these principles are, we see them start to be reflected in the design of these physical bills with Offline Cash. There's also another example called Noteworthy, different company, but again, we can start seeing a little bit of maturity in the design, especially when you compare them to bit addresses and that I showed earlier from 2011. We can see that these reference famous Bitcoin characters. This is Hal Finney. This, I think, is an Austrian economist. His name is blanking on me, or it could be someone else. But they start referencing people that played a role in the theory or the practice of Bitcoin. They start infusing some type of technology into them, but again, they kind of mirror banknote design as we think about it. So these are just some kind of brief examples. Ultimately, what this contest is about is designing your own. You can use those as inspiration. You can reference other banknotes, but we're going to be designing our own for this contest. So now let's get into the demo. I want to show a demo of how the tool works and show you guys the current state of the tool so that you can play with it. You can get an idea for exactly where your designs will live when you submit them, when you design them. So I will load up a demo. Does anyone have any questions in the meantime? No? Okay. Just give me 1 second. I will share my screen here. Okay, perfect. And everyone can see the website that I have up right now, Money Printer Go Burr. I'll drop the link here in the chat so that you can also play with it as I'm running through this. Also, if you guys can hear me, can you just give me a thumbs up? Sometimes I lose connection. I want to make sure. Excellent. Thank you. Great. So what we're looking at right now is the actual tool that was developed by a developer named Ganloff. And what this tool does is it lets you print out Ecash notes using the Cashew protocol. So you can go to this link, and the first thing that you need to do, this is applies to any time that you're using Ecash, is you need to connect to a mint. A mint is a custodian. It's essentially like a Lightning node that you're connecting to. They have a couple suggestions here. We'll connect to just the first one here, mini bits, and hit connect. We have a message that we've successfully connected to that mint. And now we can choose what type of currency that we want to denominate our bill in. In this case, there's only one option, Satoshis. So we'll select Sats. It's already selected. Hit confirm. And now we get into kind of the settings. So now you'll select the denomination. What's the denomination of the notes that you want to generate? We'll just do 21 Sats. And then you can choose a number of notes. Do you want to just generate 1? Do you want to generate 10? You know, however many 21 Sats. And obviously, if you choose to generate, 10, you're gonna pay 210 Sats. But we'll just generate 1 for now. So we'll generate 1 21 Sat note. We'll hit confirm. And now you have to pay. You have to basically pay, and then the 21 Sats that you pay are then going to be shown on a QR code in the bill. So you can pay with Ecash or Lightning. In this case, I'll pay with Ecash. I'll pay with Lightning. So I'll just get my wallet here and scan this QR code. I just paid that invoice. And it's been successfully paid. And now you see that I'm at the stage where I can basically print my bill. By default, there are already 2 bill options. There's this initial bill here, Comic Nuts by Bit Pop Art, who has already submitted some designs. And you can scroll through and maybe pick a different character here that changes. Or there is this initial bill design that you saw earlier, where you can customize the color of it. And you can upload things like a brand image. So if you wanted to, let's take this blue wallet icon. So you can upload an icon there, and now you see blue wallet appears there. And you can also upload a corner image as well. So we'll do a sparrow as a corner image. And now if we go here, we could see that there's a little sparrow icon here at the bottom, and there's an icon there. And now if you wanted to print this, you would simply hit print. And then you can hand out this physical note. And then anyone with a Cashew wallet, including you on the phone, on the call right now, if you have mini bits, if you have macadamia, if you have cashew.me, you can scan this QR code and you can claim the money. So that's essentially the tool. And this is what we're building here. Is the contest is for individuals to submit a design that will be listed here as a downloadable option. And then people will print your design, and hopefully we'll start seeing these in the real world. I'm very excited because I'm excited to hand out some of these winning designs. I love the idea of giving these out as a way to kind of introduce people to Ecash, let them know what it's about. It's kind of a different onboarding experience when you hand someone physical and tell them to scan it, explain a little bit how it works. So it's fun. I mean, that's ultimately what this is. This is fun. This is not a serious way for you to store your Bitcoin for the long term. This is not, something that's designed to revolutionize the way that Bitcoin functions as a medium of exchange. this is a tool for fun. So when you keep that in mind when you're designing, is that it should be fun. This is a fun onboarding tool, and in that spirit, I welcome fun designs. I also welcome serious designs. If you maybe are inspired by banknote design in a kind of historical context, and it should approach certain principles, you're welcome to bring that in as well. The world is your oyster. So with that, I want to open the floor to any questions, comments, feedback, thoughts. No, everyone feels like they have a good understanding of the tool, of the contest. Maybe I can talk a little bit about the requirements then. Let me just pull up the. I'm just going to pull up the issue with the requirements here, and I will share my screen. Perfect. And I'll also drop this in the chat. So this is the kind of more detailed spec. Mostly just goes over what I just went over on the call. We have a summary of the contest, a link to the tool. We have a summary of the prizes here, summary of what it is you're designing, and then the submission requirements. So in order for you to be eligible for this contest, there's really only two requirements. I guess three, which is that it has to be SVG compatible. But the first one is that your design should include somewhere a placeholder for redeeming the note. So there should be some place where the QR code can go, because sorry, I'll just quickly share my window here. Perfect. So one of the requirements is that there has to be a QR placeholder for redeeming the note. This is kind of self-explanatory, because with this bill, in order for you to redeem Ecash, you scan a QR. So there has to be somewhere that the QR code has to go. An amount. So somewhere we should indicate the amount. So right here it says 21 sats. Somewhere on the design, there should be somewhere for the amount to be shown. And you should also kind of think about in your design, how would that amount work in large and small numbers? And we're offering bonus points. So if you take real world inspiration from banknotes or maybe your own local currency, like the euro or the Swiss franc, Norwegian crown, whatever, that's a nice plus. Any type of thematic designs that are referential to Bitcoin or crypto. If you want to reference, some of the cypherpunks that paved the role for Bitcoin, maybe you want to go with a certain brand or a certain theme that's really minimalist, maybe like Swiss typographic style, just like a lot of lines. Or if you want to maybe embrace the more fun side, and kind of like how Pop Art did with the cashew character, that's a thematic design is welcome. And we also want to keep in mind that if this is something that people are going to be printing, we want to kind of be cognizant of having it be printer friendly. So if you potentially get too crazy with like the layers, with a lot of different kind of colors that are very similar, shades of yellow and stuff like that, that could end up not being very printer friendly. And that, it might be okay if this is something that you're sending off to FedEx to print with a laser printer. But if you're someone that's at home and you just want to hand these out at your local, Bitcoin meetup next week to talk about Ecash, that might not always be nice. So, we'll give bonus points to people who have maybe considered that in their design. And if you want to go all out, this is definitely not required. But if you actually deliver this as the svelte component, which is where the SVG lives, so I'll click on that and I'll open it up. Again, this is the actual kind of SVG that the software will pull when it displays the bill. If you want to deliver it in this format, you'll get some bonus points. But ultimately, The lead developer, Ganloff, he's a supporter of this contest. He's aware that the submissions are going to come in SVG format, so he'll work with us afterwards to get it to work on the tool. In terms of the deliverable, I mentioned this earlier, but I'll reiterate it again. An SVG file. So if you're using Illustrator or Figma, those are acceptable as well because you can export SVGs using that software. PenPod as well is vector software, so that's good. We recommend that when you make your submission, just put it in the form of a JPEG or a mockup. You can just present it in an image, 1080 by 1080 or 1920 by 720 if you want to go widescreen. Just make it nice and presentable. Then optional, you saw on the tool that they support the ability to upload a main brand image. Like I uploaded Blue Wallet in this example, and a corner image like Sparrow. You don't have to do that in your design, but if you want to, you can, and just maybe make sections for those. And then another note is that the Mint QR code is not needed. I mentioned that earlier. So if you go on the tool and you come across this Mint QR section, don't be confused by it. It's blank for a reason. It's going to be discontinued in later versions of the tool, so you don't need to account for that. Then at the bottom, you'll find resources. So you'll find a link to the actual live tool, Burdog and Loft, that we just looked at. You'll find a link to the actual GitHub repo for the tool if you want to fork it and run it locally and then edit the SVG. If you're a little bit more technically inclined, you can do that. And you will also find just some examples of physical Bitcoin to the blog that I mentioned earlier. And then an example of one of the companies Noteworthy, which is doing kind of similar things. So you can look at them for inspiration. And we have a question here from Umar. Should we maintain the corner designs or can we remove it if it doesn't have to fit our ideas? The corner designs can be removed. So by the corner designs, I assume you are referring to this here, where there is an option for corner image, where you can upload. I'll take this ledger here. So I uploaded a ledger icon. No, this is optional. You don't have to include this. And we'll work with the developers. If you don't include it, we can do things so like if your bill is selected, the option to include those is the option to upload something there is not visible. So you see in this example with Bit Pop Art's bill, there's no upload option. You don't have the option to upload a corner image or a brand image because his note doesn't support that. You just have the option to change the character with this drag handle here. So we have some flexibility to be able to design what the user will see when they select your note so that there's not any confusion. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, any sources of inspiration they want to share? No? Do you guys feel like you have enough information in order for you to design your custom notes? Is there anything else regarding the tool, regarding the delivery that you might want to have me answer? No, so I think everyone's in good shape. Hopefully you guys are excited about this challenge. We, as in the Cashew developers, are, because for a while this tool has just been kind of lonely in the sense where we've only had this kind of one design that is functional, but it's not always maybe the most beautiful thing to hand out. It just feels a little bit very kind of like a prototype, which in some ways it is. But we hope that with this contest, I really like this contest, and I actually pushed for this contest to be included. Not that there was pushback, but I suggested it. Was that I think it represents design at its kind of core ethos, or at the core of what design is. Design is something that you should design in order to serve a purpose, to be functional. It's a little bit different than art in that way. Sometimes art can be total self-expression. Sometimes art doesn't have to have a rigorous set of standards by which you evaluate its performance and determine whether or not it's functioning. But when it comes to this, I think this is very true design. There are some requirements that you have to keep in mind when you're doing this. This has a very clear goal and a very clear purpose. But there is also that element of creativity to this, where if you are a designer, if you are an illustrator, I think there's enough space for you to just get really creative and really free with the design. So I love that it combines those two, and it opens the door for everyone to participate, I think. Is there a dimension that we have to work with? I'll have to look into that and get back to you. Yeah, I don't know if that's absolutely required. Let me get back to you. I'll make a note of that. Check, and then I'll post my updates on the Designathon channel for this question about if there is exact dimensions that the bill should be. My suspicion is that maybe it's aspect ratio, not specific dimensions, because it's an SVG. But I also don't see why the tool can't account for. Let me. Hey, am I back? Can you guys hear me? Yep. Okay, great. So I'm not sure how much of my response to Umar's question about the dimensions you got. Basically, to answer his question directly, I'll check and get back to him with a definitive answer on whether or not the dimensions are fixed. I suspect they're not, and they could be open, but I'll find out and post an update on the Designathon channel on Discord.
So, question, Erik. So there are some requirements for what this could do right now. There could also be part of a project could be someone exploring what this can be, maybe if there are more options. So, for example, you know how you showed that some of those bills have like people's faces or faces of famous people or so in the background.
Mhm.
So what if the website also allowed you to take a photo with the camera and then applied some AI filters and made you look super cool and put you in the background? Or it used the actual Ecash note as, as the string as kind of a seed to create unique textures and colors maybe for every single note.
That would be amazing.
Maybe there's I was also thinking, so once someone scans the QR code, it's kind of it's used up, right? You can only use
Yeah.
it once.
Correct.
So what is maybe there's some ways that could be like you can fold it in a certain way to mark it as used, or maybe there's a little checkbox, or I don't know, some way like that's a thing that so
Yeah, I
people
like
don't feel like so it's clear that this has been used. Obviously you can always tear it apart or throw it in the trash, but maybe there's something else. Maybe it's a really cool note and you want to keep it, but you want to mark it as used or claimed or so or maybe there are different ratios in the future. Maybe something that fits, maybe that's like a credit card size. You can print it on a little bit thicker paper, but the QR code needs to be, I don't know, maybe there's some exploration that could be done around and if they're really cool, maybe Gandalf or so wants to implement them, so
Yeah.
I don't know how
I
open
mean,
you are to that within the context of this project. I'm just throwing things out.
yeah,
It's
no,
not
I
that design.
think some of the stuff like having an area that you can mark it as used, whether that's a fold or maybe a check mark that you draw on, that could be cool. That's something that anyone can do by just a design. The stuff like the AI face filters and the custom textures, depending on the hash of or I guess just the token string, since each Ecash string is unique, that'll be amazing. That'll be so cool. I definitely. That's definitely beyond my skills. I'll give it a try on maybe not for this contest because I'm not participating, but when I have some free time on a weekend project, that sounds like a fun one.
Cool.
Yeah,
So,
I love the exploration.
so it's something that maybe could be done here during this Designathon, some explorations that go further.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So ideas like that and explorations like that, even if you can't implement them into code, even if you were to mock something like that up, that'd be really cool. In addition to your bill, of course, because ultimately you do have to submit a bill to win this contest. But that would definitely probably get you some bonus points. And we have another question from Umar. For the submission, can we have like design options, say 2 or 3 options for it, or should there just be one option for one submission? I think the most fair way is to cap it at one submission per individual, to prevent somebody from potentially throwing multiple submissions and then increasing your chances. So I would encourage you to pick your best one and submit that one. Is anyone working on proof of brush? Happy to go into proof of brush, but maybe we could finish if there are any questions about this particular note. This particular project that we're discussing. Otherwise, I'll close the recording, and then we could talk about the different group, the different project that they're referencing. Yeah, does anyone else have any ideas or suggestions or anything they want to share? If not, then I'll pause the recording, and then we can close this session. Or I'll ask Christoph, I guess, to pause the recording.
Okay, will do. Just a sec.
Sure.